Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be sharing with you how to sew and attach a detailed structured sleeve on a transparent inbuilt corset top. So if you haven't yet seen the video where I drafted and sewed this, I'm going to leave the link at the description box. So let's start. So for this particular tutorial, this is the material I'm going to make use of. After this material, what I'm going to make use also is my gum stay. Then after the gum stay, this is the sewable boning that I'm going to use. So you can go ahead to use a sewable boning or a plastic boning depending on the type of structured sleeve you're going to make. So I'll be showing you two different methods of making a structured sleeve. So first of all, the first length I'm going to cut out is about 22 inches. Then the second one will be about 30 inches. So I'm making two structured sleeve and I'm going to be using two different methods to do that. So the width of the structured detail is just going to be 4 inches by 22 and 4 inches by 30. So I'll go ahead to cut it out on my fabric. So this measurement is not a standard, depending on the design or whatever you're making or the length of the structured sleeve you want to make. So I'm done cutting out. This is what I have. So if you notice, I cut this fabric 2 for one side. So you can as well use your fabric as your lining, or you can just cut out the material and you can cut out the lining. So for this particular one is going for this side and the next piece is going for the other side. After cutting it out, the first part we'll be working for is this part. So what I'm going to do right now is to go ahead to iron this gum stay that I cut out. I'm going to iron it on the wrong side of the fabric. So after ironing it on the wrong side of the fabric, I'm going to be attaching my boning to it. So if you're making use of a lining for your structured sleeve, this is where you'll be ironing this gum stay on it. You won't be ironing the gum stay on your main fabric. So this part will be serving as the back part. So what I'm going to do right now is to iron it just like I said. After ironing it, I'm going to measure 1/2 inch. From this part, I'm just going to measure 1/2 inch. So I'll go ahead to mark it out for you to understand what I'm saying. So from this part right now, I'm going to measure 1/2 inch from the beginning of the fabric and I'm going to draw a straight line. So after doing that, you're also going to do on the other side. So why I'm doing this is because you're going to be sewing your boning on that line. You're going to leave about 1/2 inch and then you're going to place your boning and sew. So while placing your boning, you're going to leave about 0.7 inches or 0.5 inches at the beginning, because after sewing is either you're going to weave it out or you're going to fold it in and top stitch to make that place look neat. So if it's too bulky, you can just go ahead to leave it and use trimmings to cover it after attaching. So I'll go ahead and sew this on the sewing machine and I'll bring it back to show you. But before I go over to the sewing machine to sew, if you notice that one side of this structured sleeve is a bit curved, so what I'm going to do right now is just to go ahead and use my scissors to give it a little curve at that part. So I didn't actually measure this. So after cutting it right now, I'm going to go ahead to also place my gum stay and I'm going to trace the shape I have at this part. So after tracing it, what I'll do is to place my gum stay, then I'll go ahead to iron. But before I iron and sew, I'm just going to show you a little illustration of how I'm going to do it. Then after ironing on that 1/2 inch marked, I'm going to place my boning and I'm going to sew it this way till I get to the end, and I'll leave about 0.5 inches or 0.75 inches, and I'll also do the same at the other part. So let me go ahead to sew that. So I'm done sewing it and this is what I have. So the next thing I'm going to do right now is to attach the other part of the sleeve. So to attach it, I'm going to bring the other part of the sleeve and I'm going to place it this way. After placing it this way, I'm going to flip it to the other side. So remember I marked 1/2 inch before sewing on the boning. So on that 1/2 inch, I'm going to sew or stitch it down with 1/2 inch. So after sewing, I'm going to go ahead to notch it and iron it so that it will be flat. So I'm done sewing, and this is what I have on this part. This is what it's looking like. So the next thing I'm going to do, I've notched it, and the next thing I'm going to do right now is to bend it over this way, and I'm going to iron it. I'm going to iron it to be flat so that by the time I'm going to top stitch it to the other side, it's going to lap very well. So I have gone ahead to iron it, and this is what I have. So the next thing I'm going to do right now is to top stitch this part. So what I will do is to fold in this other part, and I'm going to fold the other part that doesn't have boning on it, and I'm going to place it, fold it inside, and I will top stitch at the mouth, at the ending, very neatly. I'll sew it to the end. So you can as well go ahead to pin yours if you're finding it difficult to top stitch. So I've gone ahead to top stitch it, and this is my final result, and this is what it's looking like. So at the ending, you can go ahead to hem it, or you can fold it in to give it a clean finishing, or you can also use your trimmings or applique to cover it while attaching it to your dress. So moving to the other part of the fabric, so I'm going to be using another method for sewing a structured detail. So at this point, you can also use a plastic boning for this. So what I'm going to do is to sew 1/2 inch at both sides. After sewing with 1/2 inch, I'm going to flip it to the right side. So I'm done sewing with the 1/2 inch at both sides, and I've turned it to the right side. This is what I have. So the next thing you're going to do right now is, after that point, you're just going to measure 1/2 inch and you're going to sew down. You're going to do this at both sides. So you're going to bear in mind the size of the boning that you have before measuring this to enable the boning fit into the boning casing you're going to create. And you can also use a plastic boning for this also. So I've gone ahead to sew about 1/2 inch at both sides. So what I'm going to do right now is to pass my boning through it. So just like I said, you can also use a plastic boning for this type of structured sleeve. So the difference between this and the previous structured sleeve is that you're actually going to pass your boning through the boning channel you created, while in the previous structured sleeve, you're actually going to sew your boning on the main fabric, on the lining of your fabric. So I'm done sewing, and this is what I have. So right now we are going to be attaching this to the dress. So this dress is not actually the size of this mannequin. I went ahead to pin it at the back to hold down the dress. The dress is actually bigger than the mannequin. So first I'll be attaching this part, but before I do that, I'll go ahead to place it, and I'm going to pin. So I'm going to be attaching it where my yoke started at the back. So this is in case you're using a mesh at the back. You're going to go down a little below to avoid tearing of your mesh or net at the back. So after pinning it, what I'm going to do right now is to use my needle and thread, and I'm going to stitch it at the back. You can go ahead to use your sewing machine to do this, but it's better to use a needle and thread. And I'm using the same color of the fabric I made the dress with. So to attach your structure to the dress, you're going to start sewing it, but make sure when you're sewing, you start from behind so that the knots you made at the end of the thread will not show on the dress. And while sewing this, try to make your stitch invisible, try to make it tiny, and make sure after sewing it is neatly done. And even if it's not neatly done, you can go ahead to use your trimmings to cover it if you want to. So next we are going to be stitching this on the front part. So I'm going to be stitching it at the lower part of the cup, just like 1/2 inch towards the end of the cup this way. So please, while stitching, please do not stitch on your net, because if you stitch on your net, it's actually going to tear. So I'm just going to stitch on it this way gently, I'm going to start from the side because that's where the structure started from. So after stitching that, I'm going to continue stitching it to the end. So after stitching, this is what I have on this side, and we're going to be moving to over to join the other parts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this other one and I'm going to place it from where that one ended, just to conceal the rough edge of that other one, and I'm just going to place it and sew. So I'm going to attach it from the back to avoid the knots on the thread to show. So you can start stitching it at this point, and while stitching it, make sure that after stitching it, it is not moving. So after doing that, I'll be attaching the other parts to the front side. So I'll go ahead to stitch on this side. So while stitching, you notice by the side it is pinned this way. So and on this part, I'm going to start from the inside. So when you're sewing, please make sure you don't stitch on the net. And if you notice on this other part too, it is a bit tilted, it's not straight. So I'm just trying to create that same effect at this point. So I'm just going to continue sewing. So I'm going to continue sewing till I get the desired effect I want. So coming over to the side, you will notice that it's a bit bent to the bust side. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold it down and stitch it up a bit by the side. So after doing this, this is what I have. And please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my YouTube channel.